in the office of Representative Danny Morgan. Representative Morgan, thank you for allowing us.
It's always a pleasure to be with you all.
Well, you've had a few discussions, and you've actually put together and had an interim study about municipal funding. And that's a topic that I'm very interested in because I know cities around Oklahoma are hurting. Talk a little bit about that topic.
Well, one of the things that I and Representative Steve Martin from the Dewey County and the Bartlesville area has, he's also kind of jumped onto this with me. But for the last several years, I've been working on something that I call the Sales Tax Equalization Plan. And what it says is it doesn't matter where you're shopping and you're spending your money. At the end of the transaction, you give the merchant a zip code, and the sales tax is remitted back to that zip code. So if I'm standing in Oklahoma City and I want my money brought back to Prague, I give them my zip code for Prague, or I want it to go to Stroud or Chandler, wherever you're from. You would give the zip code that you want the money remitted back to. If, for example, Oklahoma City collects 9 cents on the dollar and say my community I want to go back the money to is only 8 cents, then I get the 8 cents back and Oklahoma City gets to keep their 1 penny, or whatever community I'm in. I like that theory because a lot of our small communities can no longer maintain those large businesses because places like just a Bass Pro, for example, or maybe a large Walmart in a regional center has pulled a lot of the local merchants out because they just can't compete. And I understand that's the case. But my point is we ought to let those communities have their sales tax money back. Should be the individual who's spending that money that says, look, I'm now forced to drive over here and spend my money here. But I want those sales tax dollars going back to my community to help my community for their infrastructure, their water and sewer programs, the sidewalks, maybe some street overlays, because I still spend 99% of my time in my community, and I'd like for that money to come back there.
So it's almost like a preferred school plan in which different kids in different areas go to different elementary schools, and for example, a grocery store might allow you to give a school number, and then some or a portion of what you have spent goes to help that elementary school. Same concept.
Same concept, because the way the Oklahoma government is structured and the way our Constitution, the cities and municipalities don't have a lot of opportunity for fundraising or for revenue streams. A lot of our smaller communities rely on franchises that they've signed with OG&E or Oklahoma Natural Gas for the rights to serve that community with their services. And so a lot of cities have to live almost exclusively on franchising fees that are charged, and ultimately those go back to the customer, and so that raises their rates in those communities. And so what I'm trying to find is a different mechanism where municipalities can say, hey, we're going to encourage our people to, even though they can't shop in our community, they can at least bring their sales tax dollars back. I mean, ultimately, you would want to make sure you shop locally. You know that your sales tax dollars stay there. And so the trade-off with that was, local merchants may say, well, if there's no incentive for them to stay here, but there's always the incentive for them to stay with that local merchant because they pay wages, they hire local individuals in that community, and again, that sales tax money will stay in that community. I wish we didn't even have to talk about this and that there was enough revenue generated in our smaller communities or rural communities. But I think the sales tax equalization plan, just because you're Oklahoma City or you're Tulsa or you're Lawton, for example, that you just end up siphoning a lot of money off the rural communities because that's where they have to go to shop for their goods and services.
So we're talking about the sales tax equalization plan, and if it's something that's of interest to you, for it or against it, you need to talk to your representative about it and give your opinion, because that's how we weigh in and help things like this either get passed or get denied. Something that was of interest in our conversation was many of these businesses in which you say, and for example, when I hear, well, Oklahoma City has the business, they deserve in order to have that sales tax money. But then you brought up a good point about how those businesses actually located in Oklahoma City or in different areas around the state. Talk about the incentives that these companies have been given in order to create those funds.
Well, and we have, particularly in the situation of Bass Pro, there were incentives given by Oklahoma City to say, you'll come locate in Oklahoma City, we'll do this for you. We'll lower your ad valorem rate or whatever the benefit was, and each community has different programs that they will use, and even the state does, says we'll give you some incentives, some tax benefits, a tax credit, if you'll come and locate in our community. So therefore, you're now reducing the sales tax revenues or tax revenues that those communities would receive. Steve. You know, I had a school superintendent in one of my local communities one day tell me, he said, you know, they've passed the maps for kids in Oklahoma City. Perfect opportunity to develop at least the capital structure, the buildings, the infrastructure of their school systems. But he said, you know, you could pass a penny sales tax in our little community and wouldn't see any difference because there's no sales tax generated in our community. So if our citizens of our community said, we want a sales tax dedicated to our school system, which you can do, that is allowed by Oklahoma law. He said, even if we added a penny sales tax to our school, we still don't generate enough sales in our community to make any difference. And he said, that's why if I was allowed to get my sales tax back, those people that are shopping in those larger communities, that would help my school system also. If our voters decided to pass a penny sales tax for our school, we could get that when we shop outside the city.
For example, if your community possibly, let's say, has an 8.5% sales tax rate, perhaps half a cent goes towards the sheriff's department or half a cent goes towards the schools. You would still be able to have those benefits because you would be drawing from the bigger areas, if you were able to say your zip code, the full sales tax back into your area.
That's correct. And what we'd probably have to do is phase this in over the period of a couple of years, because a lot of places that you shop now, especially in those large box stores and some of the large chains that we're all familiar with, at the end of the transaction, they'll ask you your zip code or your telephone number. What I found out they use that for is marketing purposes. They want to know where these people are coming so they know how to direct their advertising, and so they can go out and try to encourage you to spend more money in their store. And I thought, if they're already obtaining that information, then by golly, let's use it to a positive benefit, for me to get more mailers in the mail about why I need to shop at their store. So they're already accumulating that information. So my point was, if you're going to use that kind of information, let's use it for a positive side and say, when I shop in your store, at the end of the transaction, I say, I want my sales tax you just collected to go to this zip code number, and it goes back into that community.
And actually, this plan helps that merchant because it gives us as shoppers incentives to go ahead and give them the zip code information that they want anyway, and there's no reason not to have dual purposes.
I'm a big fan. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's just utilize the wheel to its fullest potential.
There you go. Talk to your representatives. The sales tax equalization plan. Sounds good to me. Thanks for your time, Danny.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.